Okay, thank you all for joining us. So this is a very special parsha. This parsha is special because it's special, right? But this actually is my bar mitzvah parsha. Yeah. So I was going to say about wow, I'm turning 43. So yeah, 30 years ago. I'm not going to be here, but there's a bar mitzvah boy doing the laning. So, I don't want to, there's a bar mitzvah boy doing the laning this Shabbos. Exactly, right. Yeah, so 30 years ago, I became bar mitzvah this Shabbos. It's always a special place in my heart. So I love talking about it. I love talking about every parsha, but and it's probably going to be my son's bar mitzvah parsha because we share we're 1 day apart in our Hebrew birthday. I'm turning. How old is he? My Hebrew birthday is the 15th of Elul, the 15th of Elul, and my English birthday is September 14th. So it actually is on Shabbos. Okay. Happy birthday! Look at that. Okay, anybody else have birthdays? How about anniversaries? Okay. There we go. Okay, next time we have to bring cake. We got to figure this out. Okay, so this parsha is called Ki Teitzei, right? Ki Teitzei on page 1046. If you have a comments in front of you, 1046. So Ki Teitzei means when you're going out, right? Teitzei, it means latzeit, to go out. That's in modern Hebrew also. It means latzeit, to go out. Yitzia, you might have heard that word. Yitzia means exit, right? So in Israel, instead of saying exit sign, it says Yitzia, right? It says Yitzia, which means exit. So when you're going out to war, right? So first and foremost, this is something very interesting that I find whenever the Torah speaks about like going out to war, it speaks about going out to war, right? There's many times throughout the prophets and the Nevi'im and you see that war came to their doorstep, right? But the Torah, whenever we speak about war, right, we're the Torah is sort of talking in a clean way, in a positive way, that we are going out, right? And the war is not coming to us. Right, and this is talking about, the Torah tells us, it's talking about a Milchemes Reshus. It's a war of permission. It's not a war of a mitzvah. There's two different kinds of war. There's a war of a mitzvah. That's when the Jewish people conquered the land of Israel. So that was going into the land of Israel and conquering. That was a mitzvah. There was a mitzvah to conquer the land of Israel and to get back what Hashem promised to Abraham, Yitzchak, and Yaakov, our forefathers, Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. They were exiled for a little bit, and now it's time to come back. And there were people occupying the land, and the mitzvah was to get. So that's called a Milchemes mitzvah, a war of a mitzvah to get back the land. And then it's called Milchemes Reshus, a war that's Reshus means to say that there's no mitzvah to do it, but it's okay to do, and that is for strategic plans to conquer different areas. Just like what's normal, right? Back in the day, now it's like, no, everything's frowned upon, which is good, right? But back in the day, it was very normal for countries to take over certain parts for agricultural reasons, for security reasons, right? So that's called the Milchemes Reshus, the permission war. And that's what this is talking about. This is going out to war, and that's what it's saying. You're going out to war. War didn't come to you. You're not protecting yourself, right? It's not a war of a mitzvah, right? This is a war where you're entitled to go and try to create a buffer zone, no man's land, or for agricultural reasons, for whatever reason, to go and conquer that land. That's what this is talking about. But it's very interesting. The Torah always speaks about it in a positive language, and something that we should always try to talk about. You have to be realistic and talk about things that are problems, but we always should try to talk in a positive. When we're speaking about things, right, we should try to talk in a positive way. When we're doing something good, when we're going to go out somewhere, so when we're in trouble, or sometimes we're always giving examples with a negative connotation, always giving examples with something that's bad. Or we could always try to give examples with something that's good, or give a lesson from a positive perspective. And I think that's something important to reflect on. We should always be trying to give things in a positive perspective. So now this part of the Torah is a very interesting halacha that the Torah tells us. The Torah tells us, and it was common back then to have captives, right? Captives of war. And the Torah tells us that if you go out to war and the person, one of the Hayal, the soldier that goes out, it was part of the tactics of the war, part of war tactics back then was to try to, in any way, to distract the soldiers, right? However way they were able to do it. So the last week's Torah portion speaks about that there was loud noises, they would blow horns, and they would, create all this crazy noise. That was something that they did. One of the other things that they did is that they also sometimes would send out pretty ladies into the war to try to attract the guy, right? Back then, men only went to war, right? To try to attract them and to distract them and to get them, to not focus on the war. That was one of the tactics that they used. In Jewish halakha, it was illegal. You weren't allowed to do that, of course, right? That's not one of the things that we go out to war, and it's clear that you're not allowed to do that. But the non-Jews would do that, right, to try to attract and to try to get the people that were going out to war distracted. So the Torah tells us that if, let's say, a soldier went out and saw this beautiful girl and he got distracted, right, then he fell in love with her, sort of say, and now he wants to bring her back home, right? So he wants to bring her. So what should he do, right? So the Torah is very interesting. The Torah goes ahead and says that Vinasati, you captured a capture and you saw her and she looks beautiful and you want her, so bring her to your house, right? You bring her back home. But then the Torah gives us some laws that you have to let her be secluded for a little while, let her nails grow, right? That she doesn't look so beautiful. And if still, right, chashakt, after a period of time, you still want her, right? So then you could marry her and you could keep her, right? So we're not going to have time. I'm going to take your question in a second, but we're not going to have time to go in depth into this piece of the Torah. We could spend a whole class just on this, right? Analyzing this, what's the reason, what's this, it is a lot of commentaries spill a lot of ink, right, regarding this. And I'm happy to answer a few questions, and I'm happy to expand on it after the class if you want to stick around. But the point I want to bring out from here is something very interesting. The commentaries point out that why didn't the Torah just say, be a man, right? Control yourself, right? And just leave her. Don't you know how to bring her home? And if you bring her home, you got to send her back. Like, what are you doing? She's a non-Jew, right? The Torah doesn't say about anything about converting or anything. The Torah just says that she if you want her, right, you just have to do these things, and then you could keep her, right? Okay, the commentaries say that she converts. She has to go through the conversion process, right? Of course, right? But the Torah should just say, send her home. Like, what are you doing, right? She's a non-Jew. Control yourself, and send her home. What is the Torah telling us? Is that saying that he's allowed to keep her if he does these few things that he has to do, and why those things? Again, that's where it gets more complicated. And the Rav Chaim Shmulevitz of blessed memory expands on this, and many commentaries expand on this. And the theme that they say it in different ways, but the theme that they say is based off a passage in the Talmud, right? That the Talmud tells us that is a very important rule in our free will, and a very important rule in our fight against the evil inclination. That God does not give you a challenge that you cannot handle. Any challenge that you are given, God, if God allows that challenge for you to have, be it if it's a physical you're having in your faith in God, or if it's you need a certain some food or whatever the challenge is, if it's Shabbat, if it's money, if it's whatever the challenge is that you have, right, you are able to overcome that challenge. And where does the Talmud know that from? The Talmud knows it from this passage of the Talmud, from the Torah, from this passage of the Talmud, because why does God allow him to do it? And the answer is, and this again, commentators go in depth in this, why is it? But where this individual is going, we can't imagine going out to war. We have our soldiers going out to war now, right? It's a very different kind of war. It's more organized. You're with units, you're with groups. you have vehicles, you have connection, right? Back then, the war was very different, right? You ran out and you this and you went to things. You could have been by yourself, could be with just a few people. Right? It was a very different kind of war. We have to remember that. But the emotional state that the individual is, the fear that he has, the anxiety that he has, and everything that he's going through, the Torah is telling us that we can't say no to this individual. He can't say no. Right? We're not talking about that he's not raping her, God forbid. That's not what the Torah is telling us. The Torah is telling us that he has to go through the things, and if she wants to stay and this and then, she has to cry for it. It goes through different processes, right? But the Torah is telling us that he has this desire, the evil inclination regarding this is so strong, and based off, again, his environment and what the situation is, and it being in war, and all the details have to fit in for this to be okay, right? And again, that's part of the long discussion. What are all those details, and what kind of, where all those things? But it has to be, the Torah says we cannot say no. The Torah, Hashem says, I can't say no, because this is a challenge that this individual will, if he falls into it, he's not going to be able to overcome right now. He's not going to be able to overcome it right now. And if he can't overcome it right now, so how can I say no to him? Right? So we have to, as I said, there's a lot to talk about this, right? But what we are supposed to learn out of this, what are we supposed to learn? What are we supposed to? We're not going out to war, right? And even if we are at the war, so much different. It's a whole different ballgame than it was back then. What are we? And nowadays they don't send out pretty women, right? That's not what they do, right? They just send out unfortunately people with bombs on them. That's what they send out, right? Right. But so what are we supposed to learn out of this? Right. What we are supposed to learn out of this, right, is that there is no challenge that we are faced with that God does not believe that we could overcome. That is what we're supposed to take out of this. Now, whatever that challenge is, if it's, your friend is constantly nagging you, right, and you want to, you want to just finally just tell them off, right? Or if it's, you have this juicy piece of Lashon Hara, right? The evil talk that you want to share with your friends. You're drinking together, you're having a good time, right? It's chilled and whatever, and everybody's saying different things, and you just that you're going to become the popular person for 30 seconds, right? But you just have this juicy piece of information that you want to give over. You're able to overcome that. Right? Yes, it's very difficult, but you have the ability to overcome that. If it's you're in a certain place and then no one knows you, and you want to go and then taste pork, whatever it is, wherever one is holding in their kosher level, but it's the next level, right? You're able to overcome that. Right? You're able to overcome that. I remember I don't know if I mentioned this, but when we were living in Kansas, it was one of those very cold Shabbos. We had it actually last year, like the end of July, beginning of February. We had remember it was like really, really cold. It was like everything was freezing over. So I remember it was like one of those really cold Midwest, like just dropped, right? Kansas, the weather is similar to here. And I remember I was in shul and like I bundled up and I walked to shul and, I remember someone said, well, Rabbi, isn't this the kind of weather that God would be okay that we drive to shul in, right? And I said, no. She says, what am I supposed to do? I said, don't come to shul. Right? If you are challenged, if you are challenged and you don't drive to shul normally, right? That's not what you do, but you're now having a challenge and you want to come to shul, but the evil inclination wants you to come to shul and drive instead of staying home. For you shouldn't come to shul because you don't have to. If it's too cold for you, don't come to shul. And if it's okay to walk, you just because it's cold. But if let's say you have to walk your dog, you would walk. You're not going to drive your dog, right? But you're going to walk your dog, right? So walking your dog is okay for a few minutes, right, or 10 minutes. That's okay. You bundled up, right? For some reason, I don't know how, but people that walk their dogs are able to walk their dogs in all climates, right? It's unbelievable, right? Literally, there's a hurricane outside, and they're walking their dog. A tornado over here. Right? I'm still like in Jackson, we say hurricane, right? But they're able to walk their dogs. So you're able to walk to shul, right? And if you really feel you can't, don't use this as an excuse. Whatever challenges we have, we're able to overcome. That's what we learn from this. Hashem does not give us a challenge that we can't overcome. might need to talk it over with someone. We might need encouragement of someone. And Hashem puts all those things in your path. He puts you in the path of people that can help you to talk it over with. He puts you in the path. Now it's for us to reach out to, right? He puts you in the path of someone, a Jennifer, that makes sure that the email goes out to the classes out this week, right? So now it's up to you to decide to come or not to come. Whatever the challenges are, Hashem gives you the resources to overcome them. And that's something that we always have to remember. That's the lesson that we want to learn from this parsha. Yes, there's a lot to discuss and a lot of things that are questioned and how to understand. We have to understand, remember that everything the Torah tells us is emes, is true, right? But we have to understand it. But I don't want to get right now bogged down on that because there's a lot of other things that we'll talk about it afterwards, right? But this is a lesson that we have to learn from this part of the Torah. Any questions or comments on this? Go ahead. So because, okay, great question. See that? No, don't be sorry. Don't be sorry. We like those kind of questions because it means to say that as questions are the key to wisdom. I always say this. We have my friend Jim online from Jacksonville, right? Are you in Jacksonville still, Jim? Yeah? Okay, because he was traveling a lot. Right, but now he's in Jacksonville, and he heard this from me probably a million times. Questions are the key to wisdom. If you don't ask the question, they're going to say, okay, I feel like a dummy, and I think it makes sense, but I don't know exactly what he meant. And no, it's good. Ask the question. These questions to try to understand how we learn this, excellent. So I'm going to say it over in a little different way, right? And I'm not going to get so off topic on the point itself, but try to bring it out from here. The way we learn this from is because there's one simple question: why would the Torah allow, right, someone to do a prohibition? You're not allowed to have relations with a non-Jew. It's prohibition. You're not allowed to, right? So why would the Torah allow, just because it's war, just because this? Why would the Torah allow this individual who's? Don't forget, and I forgot to mention this. Don't forget, in last week's Torah portion, going out to war, right? They went through. It's not like okay, everybody come to war and we'll figure what to do with you. On the contrary, in Jewish war, in the times of old, when they went out, they actually got rid of people. Whoever had a new house, whoever has fear, whoever's scared to go to leave. So we're talking about people that are not scared, people that are righteous also, right? So why would the Torah allow this individual to go ahead and have this relation, right? And then to extend it that he's able to even keep her if he does whatever he needs to do. And the answer is because the Torah is teaching us that the Torah felt, right, that in the context of this individual, and again, you have to figure out exactly what all the details are. We're not going to go into that right now. In the context of this individual, in the situation that he's in the war that he's at, and where the way war was done that days, and how they're dressed up, and how everything was done, that Hashem knows, because he created all of us, he created the world, and he created all the concepts of desires and everything, that this person will not be able to overcome himself. And therefore, Hashem does not go ahead and tell us no, when he knows that we cannot keep that. Right? Okay, good, excellent. I'm glad that you asked that, because that's how we understand better. So please, don't ever forget to ask. Okay, anybody else, or we can move on? Go ahead. So, no, with commentary, it's important to, and I actually didn't read through this one over here right now, right? Who they say and how they say, but it's the meaning to say that what they're saying is that the first time at war, however way they set it up, that they're able to attract. Again, war was different. It wasn't like rubble. It was different kind of war. But however way, the first time that he's attracted to her, and she comes out into the field and she gets him or whatever, she woos him with her looks, and he's in a fragile state. At that time, he can have sex at one time. But once he has sex at one time, right, and he wants to still keep her, right? He wants to still keep her, then he has to go ahead and do all these things. Right? The Torah says you had your taste. You had your taste once, right? You still want her, right? So now you're going to have to go ahead and go through all these things to see if you could keep her forever. All right, so that initial time, that's what the Torah is telling us. You could have that relation that first time because you're in the heat of the moment, you're in that desire, right? And you cannot be able to control yourself. right? You're not going to be able to say no, right? If the Torah says you're not allowed to, right? So the Torah tells us you could have that relationship that first time in your fragile state, in the whole scenario of what it is. And then after that one time, then you have to do what the Torah tells us. Right? Then you have to go ahead and bring her home. Then if you want to still bring her home. And you took her, mean l'kachtala, you took her. L'kachtala means it's, again, the Torah speaks in a clean way. You took her means to say you had relationships with her. Right? And then after that, you still like her and you still want to keep her, then you're going to have to go through the whole thing of letting her nails grow and that she doesn't look beautiful and reaching out to her father. That's what it is. Okay? Okay, let's move on. Good. So we're now going to move on to, still on the same page, but we're going to talk about, we're not going to go in, we're going to go into, very interesting, the next chapter, some paragraph, verse 15 to 18 speaks about if someone has two wives, right? And he doesn't like one of the wives, but the older one is, the oldest son, the Bechar, is from the wife that he doesn't like, but he still has to give her. Still has to give the laws. Is a Bechar, the firstborn gets the double of everybody else. Pishnaim, he gets double from inheritance. That's a Torah law, and then he gets the double of inheritance. So he still has to give her, right? So even though she's from the hated wife, right, that he still has to give her. Then the Torah goes into the next story, right, of Sarah Merah, another very difficult story of the Torah. We're talking about a child that is a specific age. The Talmud tells us, the one opinion the Talmud says that this never actually came to be. Right, it was never based off all the details of this halacha, of this age, the age group that he's in, and all the actions that he has to do. It actually never, according to, one opinion, it never actually happened. That this halach happened, but the law is still there. And Ben Sarah Merah is a child that rebels against. So you can say we all had children that rebelled, right? But Ben Sarah Merah is a child that he's just 13, just a few 3 months into 13. He drinks wine and he eats raw meat and he rebels against his parents and the parents say that he doesn't listen to our voice and again, I don't want to get into all the details of this halacha, right? But basically, bottom line is, if it's found that all the details are correct, then the boy is stoned and he's killed, right? And the Torah tells us that this is to prevent him from doing even worse things in the future. We could talk maybe on it's more of a Rosh Hashanah thing, because on Rosh Hashanah we read the story of Yishmael, right? And we say that he's judged for his future. He's not judged for his future. He's judged the way he is now. Seems a little contradictory. Okay, that's for another time. It's not for now, right? Just for some food for thought. But the point I want to bring out is that the commentaries explain that the connection between these three parshas, so seemingly this different parshios, that it's not. That even though the Torah told you originally that you could have that relation, right? You could indulge yourself there, right? But there's consequences to the actions, right? That it's most probably that you're gonna, most probably has a wife at home, right? And so it's probably going to be a hated wife, or if you have two wives, or even if you have one wife, but the relationship in the house is not a healthy relationship, then that leads to having a child like a Ben Sarah Merah, right? Having a child, when it's an unhealthy house, you'll have a child like a Ben Sarah Merah. And that's sort of the connection in between these things. And we have to understand that there's consequences to our actions. And you can say, okay, but we're Ashkenazim at least, I don't know if you're Sephardi, you could have two wives, right? I don't know why you want to have two wives, but okay, I didn't say that, right? I'm just kidding. I'm not kidding. I don't know. I'm going to keep quiet right now. I'm like thinking myself deeper and deeper and deeper in, right? Okay. We're not allowed to have two wives anyways. Chaim Rabbeinu Gershom, right? The decree from Rabbeinu Gershom in the 900s, 1000s. So how is this applicable to us, right? We don't go out to war. We don't have this, right? Our children are not eating raw meat. They might be eating bad fast food, but they're not eating raw meat. And so how is this applicable to, how can we take a lesson out of this lesson to us? And the answer is that even though we're not going to go ahead and do something that the Torah tells us that we're not allowed to do, even something that might be as we call parav, right? Parav is not milk, not meat, right? That's parav. So in Judaism, in doing mitzvot, there's also something called parav. It's not a mitzvah, right? But it's not a transgression, right? But it's sort of like in between, it's like, okay, it's having a bowl of cereal. Is that a mitzvah to have a bowl of cereal? So when I make the bracha, the blessing, before I eat it, so I get a mitzvah by making the blessing. But after eating the bowl of cereal, right, it's something that I need to do, right? It's okay. So if I'm holding and I have the right intentions and I'm eating it in order to have energy to learn Torah, I'm not holding on such a level, right? But there's things that we do. So there are things that we do that are sort of within reason, but then there's things that we do where even though it's not halachically prohibited, right? But they're very indulging in our desires. Right? It's indulging our desires, right? So how many cars do you need? You need 10 cars, right? You need 12 cars, right? Like, how big of a house do you need? You need 3 swimming pools and 5 tennis courts and, and a 7-car garage. Like, there's no prohibition, there's nothing wrong, right? But we're indulging in our desires in this world. We're indulging in the physical, materialistic world, right? We're just seeping in it. And that's something practical that we can learn from this. Again, we're not taught, we're sort of learning from that idea that when we indulge and we show that the materialistic world holds value, and the materialistic world is what's important, and we need to have the best and the fanciest thing, and every we need to have we need to bring it's kosher, it's the best kosher certificate, but we're going to fly it in from New York, right? The $1,000 meat board, right, to our kiddos in shul. I'm like, really? That's what you need to do? It's kosher. There's nothing wrong with it. And I'm not saying that there's anything wrong, but what is the impression on the children from this? What is the impression? What are you living? You're living a materialistic life. And that's not Torah. That's running after your desires in a kosher way, but you can still be running after your desires. And if we do that, or if you have unfortunately, you don't have a healthy marriage, right? And you're constantly, goes both ways, and you're constantly fighting with each other. Right? So that could affect the children too, right? That could affect the children. We are a living example. And God forbid, and I'm not trying to say that this is direct results or not. And I know plenty of people, right, that are divorced, and their kids are wonderful kids because sometimes you have to do what you have to do. And I'm not saying that that's something that's bad in itself. Sometimes the best thing is if you're getting divorced, and that's you being good parents by doing that. Sometimes it's not. Every situation is different, and I'm not talking about any individual sin. Please don't take it that I'm talking about any individual person or any individual thing. What I'm trying to say is that we have to understand that our actions have a reaction. Our actions have a reaction, even if it's kosher, right? And even if it has the best kosher certificate, we are seeping in our kids that desire is important. And then what are they going to take? They're going to take the next step, and they're not going to be respectful for other people. They're not going to be respectful to their teachers, and they're going to talk back to their elders, and they're going to. That's what's going to happen, right? That is unfortunately sometimes what happens. So that's the lesson that we have to learn, either as grandparents, as parents, right, as friends. That we have friends that come around the house, colleagues, our community. We all are educators, and I'm not going to stop saying this. I say this often. We are all educators in some way or another, because we always have someone that is learning from us. And I'm not saying not to have a good time. And I'm not saying not to go on trips. I just went with my family on a trip, right? And I enjoy a good steak. Trust me, I don't have it that often, but I do enjoy a good steak. I enjoy meat. I do. I love meat, right? But I'm not saying not to enjoy life. That's not what I'm saying. What I'm saying is to be excessive about it, and that is sort of the thing that you're always talking about, and that is your life.
So it's like. There are many solutions to the situation, but there's an optimum solution that benefits the most in the best ways. And
what do you mean by that?
Well, so you don't need 10 cars. You can have it if you want, but what's optimum for the family and the environment? It may be that 3 cars is the optimum to satisfy everybody in the best possible.
Right. So what? And I don't want to get into nuances of numbers. What the point I'm trying to bring at is, I'll tell you an interesting thing, right? There's I remember I think I might have mentioned this when we were speaking about tzedakah, or maybe I told someone privately. I don't remember, but there's a family in Toronto, a very wealthy family in Toronto, and I remember they were making a wedding once. Right? They're making a wedding once. They were, this is going back in the 90s, right? And they made it very expensive. They had ice sculptures and this and that, a very fancy wedding. And I remember I asked my father, right? I was just curious, like as just curiosity. I wasn't being negative. I asked my father, I said, like, the amount of money that they spend excessively on this wedding, and not, I said they could have taken care of tuition for a few families. They could have whatever. They're So my father looked at me. He says, "It's a good question." He said, "But let me tell you something. I know this family. This family gives more than their 10%, a lot more. They give more, like 30% to 40. They give a lot of charity. They give a lot of charity. And in this family, since of their position and where they're holding and their clientele and their business partners, they have to live on a certain lifestyle." Right? And they have to have a crazy big wedding to be able to have business with these people that then they could go ahead and give the tzedakah that they're doing, right? So he said they have to do that. And there's actually a source for that in the Torah, right? That a ksuba, right? When a man and woman get married, a man has to write a ksuba, like a contract for the wife of money that he'll provide for her and how much he'll provide for her in their marriage. And the Talmud tells us that the daughter of Kalba Savua, right? Kalba Savua is an extremely wealthy person. They're in the Second Temple era, right? Very, very wealthy person. Talmud tells us the Ksuva of Kalba Savua, if I remember correctly, it was about 1,000 zuz a week or something like that. An exorbitant amount of money, which is not typical. Right? Typical, it's like 100 zuz or 150 zuz. Right? But it's an exorbitant amount of money. And the Talmud's like, why? Why was it's because she was used to living on a certain lifestyle that she needs that amount of money to live on a certain lifestyle. So it's a tricky thing, and that's why I don't want to get into numbers of things. There are, yes, certain people are living on a certain lifestyle, and they need to. That's how they grew up. That's how Hashem blessed them with wealth, and they're giving their tzedakah, and they're giving their things. There is a concept for people to live on a certain lifestyle. What the point I'm bringing out is, it doesn't make a difference what lifestyle. You could be very poor, but the conversation in the house is always like, the newest Stanley and the newest this and having the newest, I need another, even if it's just having one more pair of shoes, but I need that. What's wrong with your shoes? No, I need it because it's the celebrities are wearing it and this and that. When our lifestyle and our attitude of our life, so it could play out by having 9 cars, or it could be that even if you're just getting a second car, right? Or it could be what trip or why you're going on a trip, or why you're buying certain clothes, or why you're doing certain things. It's not necessarily how much you have, because again, certain people should live on a certain lifestyle, right? But it's the attitude of the individual of what the relationship to the materialistic world is.
Right. So the consideration is not just oneself or one's family, but it extends wider to the groups one belongs to.
For sure, that is what we're saying is the outcome, and you have to be able. But it's a thing that one has to work on themselves, right? As a family, work on a family. But if you work on yourself, then automatically that will affect other people, right? Yeah. Okay, let's move on. Any other questions? Comments? Okay, so let's move on. That's, again, a very important lesson to learn. Okay, we're going to move on to chapter 22. Right, chapter 22, right, the Torah continues, right, and says, Lo sira shar achicha or shar nidachas, right, nidachim, right, it starts speaking about if you see the ox, right, of your brother, right, or the sheep of your, or goat, right, cast off and hide yourself from them, you shall surely return them to your brother. Do not, right, don't hide from, if you see your friend's ox or animal wandering the streets right nowadays, and we don't really have that, the dog maybe, right, or a cat, right, wandering the street, right, you have to go ahead and return it to them, right? Or if you see other lost object, right? Or v'chein taseh lechamar, you should do it for the donkey, right? Or clothing, right? Hashev tashiv, right? You should return it to them. And then the Torah continues, right? Verse 4, turning the page. Right? Lo siras chamar achicha shar nefolim baderech v'salamtem him. How can you talk about if you see your friend, right? Your friend's donkey, right? Lo chamar achicha. I'm sorry, your brother, your sibling's donkey, right? Which is referring to all the Jewish people. We're all called achim. We're called brothers and sisters, right? That's what the Torah calls all the Jewish people, right? And they're falling down from the load on their back. You have to help them, right? Help them to get up. So whenever I read, there's a lot of Jewish law through this, right? A lot of tractate Baba Kama, tractate Baba Basra, right? Baba Metzia, right? Deal with the laws that are implemented from the idea of returning lost objects and many other laws. Whenever I read through this, I always get inspired, right? And I just want to share with you this an inspiration that I get from reading through this. I always get inspired that the Torah is so careful and makes it halacha that we have to care about other people's properties. We have to care about other people's property, and we can't just turn a blind eye. We can't say, "No, I didn't see that." Right? I don't. Right? It's something like practical for us now. Unfortunately, nowadays, you have to be careful who you stop for, right? But if you see someone on the side of the road that their car broke down, right? I didn't see that, right? I didn't see that. And so nowadays you also have to be careful because, you don't know who it could be, unfortunately. We're living in dangerous times, right? But if you're in a place where you know who it is, right? Or, let's say it's a fellow Jew and you're not concerned, right? Or, it looks like a nice person. If you're able to help, stop and help. Stop and help. I think it was last year or maybe a year and a half ago. I was taking my kids back from an orthodontist appointment for my daughter. My wife, I had to pick up, it was at the end of the day, and I had to get all the kids because my wife was out or something. I don't remember why, but I had to take all the kids with me, even though it was for one daughter, right? And it was out in Chesterfield, actually a little past MTI. That's where my daughter was getting her braces done. And we're coming back, right? And I'm not sure what happened, but my tire blew on the road. It's a pretty busy street, right? That street. So I quickly sort of pull over, right? Like boom, I said, it's okay. The tire blew. I realized, right? So I pull over, and I turn into the first street that I'm able to turn right into because it can't be on the side of the road. It's a busy street. Right? So I pull over and I go out and I look at it. Okay, the tire's blown. I call Geico. At the time I had Geico. All right, I called Geico. Yeah, it's be 45 minutes. I said, okay, what can we do? And the kids are starving, and I have all the kids in the car, and all of a sudden, right, this pickup coming out of the housing community in the side street, all of a sudden it's coming down. I remember it's a red pickup, right? It comes out, and this guy jumps out. Kids get scared. I said, calm down. A guy jumps out. I said, oh, you need some help? What happened, right? So, oh yeah, it's a flat tire. I said, yeah. I said, I got called Geico. I said, do you have a spare? I said, I do have a spare. I had a spare. So he said, oh, I'll change it for you. He pulls out he had his tools in the truck, right? And he pulls it out and he lifts the car up and he changes the tire for me, right? And oh my gosh, right? I said, thank you so much. So this, out of the blue. So he tells me, he said, I just want to let you know. I said, this is such a coincidence. He said, God loves you. I said, okay, thank you. I remember he said something. I remember my kids remember this. He said, "Are you Jewish?" I said, "Yeah." He said, "God loves you guys." Because let me tell you what happened. He said, "I don't live here. I live an hour and a half away, somewhere nowhere in Missouri." And he said, "But my mom lives here, and my mom just had surgery, so I came in to visit my mom." Right, and I just finished visiting her, and I was going to my friend or something to go visit him, and I happened to leave the house right now. But I'm only here for 2 days, right? And you happen to pull into this street, and God loves you, right? So there's a whole nother lesson to learn from this, and God does love us, right? God does love us, and if we could just appreciate as much as some of the non-Jews know that God loves us, how much we would feel that love, right? But the point I want to bring out over here is This guy did not turn a blind eye. Right? If you would have turned, I had kids, hungry kids. It was the end. It was like 4:30 in the afternoon. They were just out the whole day of school, right? And I was like, okay, waiting for Geico, and it could be, how long it could be, right? And this person did not turn a blind eye. That's what the Torah is telling us. We have to be respectful for other people's stuff. We have to think about other people's stuff, because we cannot live in our own bubble. Cannot live in our own. It doesn't affect me. It's not my concern, right? It's not my thing. It's not my right. No, we have a responsibility for everybody, and that's always inspires me when I read these. There's a lot of halacha, a lot of Jewish law that's learned from these verses. Right? But the point that's what inspires me is this important point that we have to remember, that we can't turn a blind eye. We have to be looking and willing to help other people, even if we don't know who they are. Of course, you have to be safe, and that's first and foremost. You have to be safe, right? But you have to, when I was in Lakewood, New Jersey this past summer, I went to the Gordon wedding. All right, I don't know if you know them, but the Gordons, they live here in town. Their daughter was a graduate of our school, and I went to the wedding. I had a car, right, because I was staying by a cousin, and I was, meeting different people. And over there, it's basically all Jews, and there's kids going back from yeshiva or what to go, and on the road just hitching. Right? I could just turn a blind eye, so I don't, right? But I gave a lot of these kids hitches. I was so happy to be able to help them. I just saved them, because it's such a big area, and it's and I just cut them, 20 minutes from their trip home, and they're going to try to get another hitch. Nowadays on the regular road, it's dangerous to pick up a hitchhiker, right? But if you know the person, if you're in a place where you think, what does it hurt you to help someone else out and not to turn a blind eye? So I think that's an important lesson that we could all learn from these verses. Any comments or questions? Okay, so let's move on. Okay, so we're gonna jump to chapter 23. All right, chapter 23 and verse 4. Yeah, verse 4. Page 1054. So the Torah now goes ahead, and the Torah speaks a lot. What we skipped is speaking about different relationships you're not supposed to have. And again, as I mentioned last week, I always encourage people to go and read through the Torah portion in the English or Hebrew, whatever language you're comfortable with. Look at the commentaries on the bottom. If you do have questions and you're not sure, feel free to always message me. I'm always available. Please, always feel free to message me. And it speaks about if you build a new house, if you have to build a fence on it. There's a lot of interesting halacha laws that can be talked about. But I want to jump to for this year, right? Maybe next year we'll talk about those things. But I want to jump to this. The halacha, the Torah tells us, "Lo yavo Amoni umayavi b'kahal Hashem." Someone from Ammon and Moab, two nations that actually descend from Lot, who was Avram Avinu's nephew, right? Someone from their tribe, from their descendants, cannot join the Jewish people. They cannot convert, right? They cannot join the Jewish people. Why? The Torah says, right? Lo yavo lachem kahal al devar, because asher lo kadmu eschem belechem b'mayim b'derech b'tzeischem b'mitrayim. Right? Because when you were leaving out Mitzrayim and you were traveling on the road, right, and you reached out to them and said, we're even willing to buy, right? We'll pay taxes, we'll pay our way. And they said, no, we're not giving you anything. And on the contrary, they came out and they went out to war against the Jewish people. And that you hired Vasher Sachar Lechas Bilam ben Barah, and they hired Bilam, right, to go ahead and curse the Jewish people and to fight the Jewish people on your way out from Mitzrayim. Right? Therefore, right, lo avo Hashem alecha, and therefore you're not allowed to bring them into the nation of the Jewish people. Right, exactly. Only men, because where did Ruth come from? Right, Ruth is from Ammon, right, from Moab. Right, so exactly, right. It's only the men, right. So the commentaries want to know why the Torah doesn't, even Mitzrayim, who persecuted us for so long. So the Torah tells us, either it was before, the Torah tells us that someone from Mitzrayim has to wait 4 generations sort of to clean out their DNA a little bit, right? But the 4th generation could join the Jewish people, right? Even someone from Amalek, which we're going to talk about at the end of the Parsha, which came out, and we have Zachar, remember what Amalek did to you, and there's a mitzvah to wipe out the people from Amalek. But if an Amaleki converts to Judaism, he's allowed to convert to Judaism. What is it that Ammon and Moab are not allowed to convert to Judaism? And the Torah tells us because they didn't give us bread and water. Come on, what are we like? We're okay. So they didn't give us bread and water. Like the Mitzrayim persecuted us. They put our babies into cement bricks. They killed us. For 210 years, Amalek came and followed us. First ones after Kriyas Yamsuf. Right? Like what's this so bad? And the commentaries explain and elaborate on this is because the Torah is telling us that a midah, an attribute, right, is something that's ingrained in us. And if we don't uproot it, it just goes from generation to generation to generation. And this, having this midah, this attribute of not caring about someone else, not even bread and water. That's what it speaks about, bread and water. We're not talking about luxuries. We're not talking about, staying in the hotel. We're not speaking about, going to our restaurants. We're talking about bread and water, basic necessities. They didn't want to help the Jewish people with basic necessities when they were traveling in the desert. And they were just asked us to allow and to have some basic necessities. A nation that as a whole, and again, that's why it's the men, because the men were the one that did it, the women were not involved in that, right? But a nation that has this attribute inside of them, that is totally against the Jewish DNA. What was Avraham Avinu known for? Avraham Avinu opened up his tent on 4 sides to be able to have anybody walk into his house, Jew, non-Jew, Arab, that didn't make a difference. Everybody was invited to his house. He cared about everybody. He wanted to feed everybody. He wanted to take care of everybody. Ammon and Moab were completely the opposite. And when you don't have that, that is not a Jewish trait. That's not something that could be part of the Jewish people. And then therefore Hashem said, they cannot. Someone that goes ahead and persecutes us and things like that, that was that generation. They got caught up in something. They were terrible. They were mean. They get punished for it. But it's not an attribute within them. The next generation could learn different. They could learn about it different. So they could be intellectual. They could change themselves. But an attribute like this of not caring for other people, that is something that genetic and inherited. And that can't be. And that's something that we, on our level, could all just reflect on, that we have to sort of the opposite way. We have to remember that we are not Ammon and Moab, right? We are people that have to be reflected in thinking about other people. Right? We are people that are constantly, right, are constantly concerned of feeding other people and helping other people out. That is our nature. That's who we are, to the extent that we cannot mix with people that are not like that. Right? And that's something to always be aware of and to reflect on. Okay, let's move on. We're going to move on to chapter 23, verse 15. Right? Yeah, second. What do I have here? Yeah, so the Torah goes ahead and tells us, second. Yeah, sorry, verse 20. Sorry, verse 20. Page 1056, verse 20. So the Torah goes, again, it speaks about many different halachas, and in there it throws in, Lo sashech lachicha neshach kesef, do not cause your brother to take interest, right? Interest in water, in money, interest in food, right? Lenachri tashech, right? But you're not allowed to take interest. And this is the halacha, it's a known halacha, that when you lend a fellow Jew money, you're not allowed to take interest, right? There's if people are in the business and they if they have business, bankers or things like that in Israel, right, or even in America, there's something called the heter iska, right? There's a whole legal document that the Talmud speaks about. It was created, right, to that it's not you lending, it's a Bayesian lending. There's a whole legal document that allows you. But when I did my mortgage through a religious person here in town, right, and one of the documents was this heter iska. We have to sign this heter iska in order for me to be able to take a mortgage out, right, through his providers, right, because he's part of that. So we had to write a heter iska, right. So there's these laws are very, very intricate, and again, a lot of the Code of Jewish Law elaborates on this extensively. And I don't want to get into the laws right now. Right? We're not giving a halacha class, right? But these are very interesting laws. There's a whole discussion of if you lend someone money in one currency and you want to pay back in another currency, right? If there's inflated, that's now there's interest. It's not really. I'm not paying interest. I'm just paying the same amount. But now the value is more. Again, it plays around in many, many different aspects. But the point, the discussion that I want to talk about, and Rabbi Schwab speaks about this. A lot of people have asked this, is that really, like, if you stop to think about it, what's wrong with interest? It's business. It's regular business. I can rent my house, right? I have a house. I can rent it. The Torah doesn't tell me I can't rent my house. Right? I have a car. I have an ox. I'm allowed to rent my ox. I'm allowed to rent my lawnmower. Right? I'm allowed to rent my stuff. So why can't I rent my money? Right? I'm just basically, like, we call it loaning, right, with interest, but it's basically really just renting my money. You want to use my money. I don't have my money now. I don't have the $100,000 in my bank account. Right? I could get interest, or I could use other things. Right? So I just pay me for being able to use my money. What is really, we look at interest like a dirty word. Well, what's wrong with it? It's just regular business stuff, right? And also the Torah clearly tells us that you're only not allowed to take interest from your fellow Jew. You're allowed to lend money with interest to a non-Jew, right? And this actually has given the Jewish people a tremendous amount of headaches throughout the ages. A lot of the pogroms and a lot of the debates were brought. Look, they hate us and they think they're better than us because look, they take interest from us, but don't take interest from other Jews, and this has caused a lot of struggle for the Jewish people throughout history. So, like, what's the Torah? Why not? Like, why can't I take interest? Like, if you stop and think about it, it's a very simple question. It's like, what's wrong with taking interest? We take rent for things, so why can't I take let's call it rent for my money? Right? Schwab says something very, very powerful. He says something so beautiful, so simple, but so beautiful. And Rabbi Schwab expands on this, and he says that the Torah, and I sort of hinted to this a little bit before, the Torah constantly, whenever it speaks about these laws of your friend's animal being lost or other things like that, it constantly calls it achicha, your brother. Right? Constantly Torah calls it achicha. And over here also, right? It says though, tisak lachicha nesach, to your brother, right? Interest. It says Rabbi Schwab that the Torah is telling us that when let's say your family member, let's say interest was halachically okay, let's say, and your children, your sibling, your brother, right, your first cousin, right, or a close relative, right, someone that you're close with, right, or even really a very close friend, right, like someone like your brother, right, like family, someone that's family, either physical family or and he comes and says, hey, I'm struggling right now, I need a loan, or you have the ability to lend, right? And I need to buy a house, right? Or whatever it is, right? Would you think of charging them interest? Family members, you lend if you have the money, right? You'll lend them the money, right? If it's a house or a car, right? So then it's more common to we'll work out a deal. You want my car for a certain. We'll rent a car or things like that. But lending money, a small amount, it depends on the person's ability, right? If I don't have the ability to lend the money, I can't, right? But for a family member, it's sort of accepted, right? And even in the non-Jewish world, a sort of family, you lend because it's your family. You want to help them out. And usually when you borrow money, it's because they need that money for basic necessities, right? Or even if it's for a little more than that, but they need that money. So it says Rabbi Schwab that the Torah is telling us that that really interest should be permitted. There's no reason why not. It's regular business, And there's really no reason why the Torah should prohibit interest. And that's why you're allowed to take interest from a non-Jew. But the Torah is telling us that you have to look at each one of your fellow Jews, if you know them, if you don't know them. If they live in Japan or they live in Israel, they live right here in St. Louis. It doesn't make it where they live, but your fellow Jew, you have to look at them as Achim Anachnu. We're brothers. We're family. We're one unit. We're not strangers. Right? We are family. And therefore, the Torah tells us to the extent I want you to realize this idea that how important it is to me that you guys realize with your family that when you lend money, which usually family members won't charge interest, you're not allowed to charge interest to show that we're family. We're family. Right? So the answer is that you're right. The question is right. You should be allowed to charge interest. But the Torah is telling us that we have to look at each one of us as family, and therefore that's why a non-Jew is allowed to charge interest, because they're not our brothers and sisters, right? We can be friendly with them. We're very thankful for allowing us to live in this country, right? We're very thankful when they're kind to us, and we could go to a ball game with them, right? But at the end of the day, we have to realize, and the Torah is telling us that they're not our brothers and sisters, right? We have laws about that. That's why it's called the Nesach, and things like that to prevent that they're not family. There could be good friends, but they're not family. And therefore, that's why you're allowed to take interest from a non-Jew. But from a fellow Jew, the Torah is telling us they're family. We have to remember that. And therefore, that's why you're not allowed to take interest. Right? And this is such an important answer, right, to remind us. And we see this all the time. Just quickly, I know we're getting short on time, right? But just in the 2003, Pesach 2003, there was a big strike in Eretz Yisrael in the airport. And that time, I know there was just one, not before, just now, but the airport, then they shut down completely. No flights were coming in, and they sort of just happened. Right? And it was, of course, a time when everybody was coming back right after Pesach. All the boys were coming back to yeshiva. All the girls were coming back to seminary. Right? Of course, they did it at a high time, right, to make the impact. And me and a lot of my friends were stranded in Europe because back then it was much cheaper to fly through Europe. Now it's sort of actually cheaper to fly direct, right? But there weren't a lot of flights direct, and it was cheap to fly through Europe. I was flying Alitalia. I had friends that flew through KLM, friends through Swiss, all over, literally friends all over. And each one of us had the same experience. The Jewish community, wherever they landed, be it if it was a big one or a small one, the Chabad came out. We weren't stuck in Milan, Italy, right? Not a very large Jewish community, but the Chabad came out and asked us for any food or whatever it is. A friend of mine was in Amsterdam. He flew KLM. They said the kollel, they have a kollel there. The kollel came with a van, and he wrote anybody that's they wrote in sort of in Hebrew because they don't want anybody to come, but any Yehudi that's stuck here. And he said there were like 15, 20 people, and they put them up in place. They fed them, right, wherever they were. Right, the Jewish community gathered together. They knew them. They didn't know them. Because we are brothers and sisters. That's what we do. That's what we are. And we have to remember that we are stronger when we remember that we're family. Right? And that's what this halacha of neshek, of ribbis, right, is teaching us, reminding us that we have to remember that. We'll just end with one more thing, and then we'll end with this. Again, there's a lot. There's so much to talk about, right? But I just want to talk about the end of this week's parsha, right? The end of this week's parsha is all the way at the end, and the end of this week's parsha talks about. Let's see what. I'll start over here. I'm going to skip. Yeah, so the end, all the way at the end of 1066. Just one more thing, really. 1064. I apologize. I know I said just one more thing, but. We rabbis do that all the time. So at 1064, from verse 13 to the end of the page, speaks about cheating in measurements. Right? The Torah tells us that you're not allowed to cheat. Lo yeh lecha b'kis even ve'emen gedola katana. You can't have a bigger stone or a smaller stone. That's how they measured their weight. Right? Measured their weight. That's how the grain or the money or whatever it is. Everything was measured by weight. And you can't cheat in your. And it says that Hashem lekecha nosen lecha. This is a sova. This is is abomination to Hashem. And the commentaries say, like, there's a lot of halacha that is really, it's about every time you're not doing the word of Hashem, it's an abomination. But the Torah doesn't always say that this is an abomination. Why by this one, right? By the cheating of measurements of a bigger stone or smaller stone, or why over here does the Torah tell us that it's an abomination, right? And it's a corrupt thing to do. I mean, there's a lot of halacha that are talking about money too, right? But why over here? And the commentaries explain is because this is something that is very hard. Let's say you just chip the stone just a little bit, right? It's a fraction. No one will really know the difference. And you know, on small things, it really won't make a difference. But on larger, weights, it can make a big difference. It's a difference of, 100 pounds or, 90 pounds. And that 10 pounds can make a difference of how much either the person has to spend or how much he receives. But really, it's just people can't tell. It's just a small little indent on the measurement, right, on the stone that's being used. And therefore, it's something that someone can say, well, no one will know, right? No one knows, and no one can tell, and this it's only me. And something like that says Hashem, no, that's an abomination, because it means to say that you don't believe in Hashem. Hashem is everywhere. Hashem sees everything that we do, right? Hashem knows everything that we do. If it's a small little tiny, we think it's just a small little thing. I'm just going to change that, from a 1 to a 2, or I'm just going to, just sneak that little, no one, Hashem knows everything that we do, wherever we are. And therefore, if one is willing to go ahead and cheat on business, and in this way, if he's cheating because people know, okay, so then the person has a desire. But if he wants to do it in a way that no one else knows, because he wants to look like a good guy, and I'm an honest businessman, I'm the honest businessman, right? He has big honest businessman, yeah, honest say he's good, right? But he's not, because he's hiding. And that means to say that he's more scared of people than he's scared of Hashem. And that's an abomination. That's something that we all reflect into our daily lives. In a certain way, in a certain level, and God forbid not on this level, but on a certain level, we all have it to a certain degree that, we have to reflect on it and make sure that we don't have the fear of our fellows more than the fear of Hashem. We'll just end with the remembrance of Amalek, because it's such an important part of our Torah. We do read it always, a parsha before Purim, right? And it's at the end of this week's Torah portion. And the question is, what did Amalek do more than anybody else? We had Ammon and Moab came to fight with us, right? Midian came, and Edom, and so many people fought with us, right? What is it that Amalek did that we have to remember to wipe out Amalek forever? And there's many different understandings and many different things. But the thing that I always like, I remember hearing this from my rabbi, is based off the verses, but we don't have time to sort of go into it, and I'm happy to afterwards. But just to bring out the point is that they were the first ones, asher karcha baderech. I mean to say they're the first ones after the splitting of the sea and after the plagues. They're the first one to come and fight the Jewish people. Right? All the nations of the world were scared of the Jewish people. Imagine, there was the 10 plagues, the splitting of the sea. The nations of the world were just going to let the Jewish people ride right through. Okay, well, we're not touching you. But Amalek said, no. It says that Rashi here and in the Talmud, based off the Talmud, right, that Amalek were like the person where you have a boiling hot bath, and they went ahead and they went inside to cool it down, but they knew they were going to get burnt, but they were willing to get burned just to cool it down. Right? So Amalek knew that they were going to probably lose against it. They knew that, but they wanted that people should not have that inspiration. These people should not be in awe. They said, look, they are touchable, right? Go ahead and fight. Look, I went ahead and we fought them. Okay, we lost, but we went ahead and fought them. Once you break that inspiration, once you break that honest, that idea, then it sort of becomes more easy for other people to come. And that's what happened. And that's what Amalek represents. Amalek represents the idea, and this is something that we all have to work on personally, wiping out Amalek within ourselves, is that when you see someone do something inspiring, you hear a good speech, right? Don't be that person, and people say, oh yeah, that was good, and look what that person is doing. And say, yeah, that's true, but that whole inspiration's gone. You just killed that inspiration. Right? Don't be that Amalek. Don't be that person that wipes out other people's inspiration. right? And that is what the Torah is telling us. We have to wipe out Amalek because that is detrimental. That is saying no. We don't have to worry about spirituality. We don't have to worry about the thing because we're just going to be mundane in our own lives, and we don't have to worry about that. And that's what we all have to reflect on and make sure that we wipe out Amalek from ourselves, and not be the person, right, that kills people's inspiration, or even makes a little joke about it, or makes some kind of comment, right, that will deter other people from growing and being inspired. But let's make sure that we don't do that, and hopefully we'll see a quick redemption, and we should be only safe. Thank you all for joining us today. I'm going to turn off the recording. If anybody has any questions or whatever,